Welcome to The Harvest. I'm Carmel Fisher, and this is your weekly roundup of capital market news, views, and clues. So, first off, the Biden administration taking an attack on student debt relief, and they plan on impacting positively the lives of 30 million Americans.
I'm proud to announce 5 major actions to continue to relieve student debt for more than 30 million Americans since I started my administration. And starting this fall, we plan to deliver up to $20,000 in interest relief to over 20 million borrowers and full forgiveness for millions more. I will never stop.
There's a lot to be seen where that's concerned, so stay tuned. We'll also cover the $6 billion booming industry brought on by the solar eclipse. I hope you got to see yours. I certainly did. And then, as we all know, there are 2 things that are certain in this life: death and taxes. 2 things are happening to that effect. O.J. Simpson passes, and tax day is coming up on April 15th. Now, there are so many more developments in AI. I can't wait to speak to those in terms of conferences, summits, and what JPMorgan CEO has to say about that.
JPMorgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon believes that artificial intelligence will have extraordinary consequences on society. In his annual letter to shareholders,
A new study from the Harvard Business Review also reveals that women in senior positions are proving to make companies more profitable, more productive, and more collaborative, which I think is super needed at this point, given the heating inflation rates that are now starting to really worry Wall Street. Stay tuned. Demystifying Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. The Biden administration is canceling even more student debt. On Friday, the White House announced that an additional 277,000 borrowers will see their student loans eliminated, amounting to about $7.4 billion in forgiven debt. These borrowers qualified for that relief because they were enrolled in one of the loan repayment or forgiveness programs the administration created or revamped while it was also trying to roll out its original plan for broad loan cancellation. The news comes a few days after Biden announced more specifics on its Plan B for student loan forgiveness, nearly a year since the conservative majority on the Supreme Court struck down the original try. The second attempt is less all-encompassing than the first, which would have forgiven up to $10,000 in debt for most borrowers, but it is still pretty ambitious. Plan B generally is invoking a different legal authority than the one used in 2022. It builds off existing programs that haven't faced the same kind of legal pushback and is much more targeted, all in an attempt to avoid the fate that, the first loan forgiveness plan faced at the Supreme Court. Still, the Biden administration is likely to face opposition from Republicans and conservative critics who may try to use the federal court system again to derail the plan. It's also unclear whether voters, especially younger ones, will give Biden credit for this attempt, since it largely applies to borrowers who have had debt for a long time, like millennials and Gen Xers. Combined with other loan forgiveness plans implemented during President Joe Biden's term, Plan B would, according to the White House, relieve debt for more than 30 million Americans. Under this new plan, more than 4 million Americans will have their entire debt cancelled, and 10 million more would see at least $5,000 of relief. Any relief, though, is likely at least a few months away. The plan announced Monday is the result of a regulatory process that started a month after the Supreme Court struck down the first plan, and it still requires a public comment period before anything can go into effect. Meaning, the earliest that debt relief would likely begin is only this fall. On to the solar eclipse and the expected economic impact. So the total solar eclipse Monday was said to be able to generate $6 billion in economic activity, according to one estimate, happening on April 8th. If you were in the path of totality, I hope you enjoyed what was a blackening of the sun for 4 minutes. On our side in California, we got a partial take. But I'm more interested in the total economic impact, including secondary downstream effects, which could be as much as $6 billion. That kind of a boost to the US economy, according to an analysis by the Perryman Group. Indeed, visitors from all over the world would be flocking and had flocked to a 150-mile wide band of the US stretching from Texas to Maine. Philip Powell, a professor of economics at Indiana University in Bloomington, said that if you multiply the impact of a typical big concert or sporting event by 10, you would then understand the potential economic impact of this occasion. So it's definitely a hard to repeat influx of visitors from far away, and that's an important marketing opportunity for any region. Nonetheless, if you missed it, stay tuned. Hopefully you can be around and see it in 2045, 2044. But the next total solar eclipse will occur on August 12th, 2026. But it will mostly pass over the Arctic Ocean. Totality, when the moon fully obscures the sun's light, will be visible along a path that cuts through Russia, East Greenland, the western coast of Iceland, Spain, and a tiny part of Portugal. On one of the certain things in this life, death. O.J. Simpson has died of cancer at the age of 76. His family announced on Thursday. The former NFL star and broadcaster's athletic achievements and fame were eclipsed by his 1995 trial in the brutal killings of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman. Simpson assembled a dream team defense for the trial. The proceedings captivated the country, with tens of millions of viewers tuning in at home and at work. In 1997, a civil trial jury unanimously deemed Simpson liable for the deaths and ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages. He later served about 9 years in prison for an unrelated case involving a memorabilia robbery in Las Vegas. He was released in 2017. Related to the news that O.J. Simpson, longtime lawyer and executor of his estate, said Friday that he will fight to prevent the payout of that $33.5 million judgment awarded to the families of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman. Gloria Allred, the star Los Angeles attorney who represented Nicole Brown Simpson's family during O.J. Simpson's criminal trial, said the former football star's death is a reminder of the justice system failing battered women and allowing celebrity men to avoid true justice. And for the other certainty in this life, taxes. And tax day is upon us on April 15th. But if you haven't filed your 2023 tax return with the IRS yet and you still owe income tax for last year, the good news is you still have time to rectify those situations before you're penalized for failing to do so. Most filers have until 11:59 p.m. Monday, April 15th. Some, however, get an extra day or two if they live in Maine, Massachusetts, or Washington, D.C. due to observed holidays. And others who live or work in federally declared disaster areas will have even more time to both file and pay thanks to IRS-granted extensions. The IRS has also given an extension to individuals and businesses affected by the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel. But if you are not in any of those situations and you can't file a full return by Monday, at the very least submit Form 4868 to get an automatic 6-month extension to file. Keep in mind that this is only an extension to file your return and avoid a failure to file penalty. It is not an extension to pay whatever outstanding balance you owe. That amount is still due on April 15th. Happy Tax Day. Any weekly roundup would not be complete without giving some developments on AI. The reviews are in. AI gadgets aren't ready to replace smartphones just yet. Humane's new AI pin, the first major AI device, wanted to make you less reliant on your phone. But now that reviewers have gotten their hands on it, they're warning, don't chuck your smartphone in the junk drawer just yet. At this point, the wearable device seems to be causing more headaches than it's worth. But while AI gadgets might not be ready from prime time, that doesn't mean they don't have a bright future. Out of the box, the AI pin can make calls, send texts, take photos and videos with voice commands. They can stream your music, recommend nearby restaurants and bars, and project a futuristic laser display that can hold up to your palm. Pretty cool. But let's see, it might not be ready for mass production or mass consumption just yet. Stay tuned. On that note, one of the biggest banks, JPMorgan Chase's CEO, Jamie Dimon, released a letter to shareholders focusing on AI. They have 400 use cases and are basically all in. Despite all of that, the stock fell despite beating earnings estimates as CEO Jamie Dimon warned of economic trouble ahead. Dimon's shareholder letter also spooked investors. He expressed concern over wars and quantitative tightening and said a new world trade order like the Bretton Woods Agreement that followed World War II might be needed. Dimon also warned that deficits remain high and inflation remains sticky. Rather than expecting lower interest rates, Dimon warned of 8% rates, saying the odds of a soft landing are less than the 70 to 80% analysts expected. Higher rates could hurt the bank's commercial real estate business, which Dimon said last month was handling the stress. Now CFO Jennifer Pipzak, a potential Dimon successor, is warning there's no light at the end of the tunnel for the sector. Women in senior positions make companies more profitable, productive, and collaborative, according to a Harvard Business Review study. Research has shown that firms with more women in senior positions are providing safer, higher quality customer experiences, making them more socially responsible and, yes, profitable, among many other benefits. And of course, there is a clear moral argument for increasing diversity among top management teams. But when it comes to explaining why having more female executives is associated with better business outcomes and what specific mechanisms cause those positive changes, existing research is much more limited. This and more on the Harvest Podcast, found on Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find your podcast.